Sarah Chen closed her eyes and let her fingers move across the piano keys. The old piano sat in the corner of her parents' garage, covered with dust and old boxes. She had to move 3 cardboard boxes just to sit on the small bench. The keys were yellow from age, and some of them stuck when she pressed them down. But Sarah didn't care. When she played, nothing else mattered. She was 32 years old now. For the last 10 years, she had worked at a big company in the city. Her job was in marketing. She wore nice suits every day and sat in meetings with important people. Her office had a window that looked out at other tall buildings. Everyone said she was doing well. She made good money. She had been promoted 3 times. Her business cards said Senior Marketing Executive in bold letters, but Sarah was not happy. Every morning when her alarm went off, she felt heavy inside. Getting dressed for work felt like putting on a costume. The meetings felt empty. The presentations felt meaningless. At night, she would come home to her small apartment and feel exhausted, but not in a good way. She was tired from doing things that didn't make her feel alive. The only time Sarah felt real was on weekends when she drove to her parents' house and played their old piano. She had learned to play when she was 7 years old. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had told her parents that Sarah had talent. All through middle school and high school, Sarah had practiced every day. She played in school concerts. She won competitions. Her bedroom walls had been covered with certificates and ribbons. Then she went to college. Her parents had sat her down before she left home. They told her that music was nice, but it was not practical. They said she needed to study something that would give her a real career. Her father worked in accounting. Her mother was a nurse. They were practical people who believed in practical things. They told Sarah that musicians didn't make money unless they were famous, and most people never became famous. They said she should study business instead. Sarah had listened to them. She put away her dreams of music school and enrolled in business classes. She told herself that her parents were right. She could always play piano as a hobby, they said. Playing for fun would be enough. But it wasn't enough. It had never been enough. Now, 10 years later, Sarah sat at that dusty piano and knew she couldn't keep pretending anymore. She had saved up money. She had been looking at music programs online late at night when she couldn't sleep. There was a conservatory in the city that offered intensive courses for adult students. The program was 6 months long. It was expensive, but she had the money saved. She just needed the courage to do it. Last week, she had finally made a decision. She went to her boss and asked for a 6-month leave of absence. Her boss had looked at her like she was crazy, but he agreed. The company policy allowed it, even though no one ever used it. Sarah had walked out of that office feeling scared and excited at the same time. Her hands had been shaking. This was really happening. Now she just needed to tell her family. That's why she was at their house on this Sunday afternoon. It was their tradition to have dinner together every Sunday. Sarah's brother David would be there with his wife and 2 kids. It would be the perfect time to share her news. Sarah practiced one more song before going inside. It was a piece by Chopin that she had learned in high school. Her fingers remembered the notes even after all these years. The music filled the dusty garage and made her feel whole. When she finished, she took a deep breath and went into the house. The smell of her mother's cooking filled the air. Her father was in the living room watching a football game on television. David's kids were running around the house playing tag. David and his wife were helping their mother in the kitchen. It was a normal Sunday, just like hundreds of Sundays before. They all sat down at the big dining table. Sarah's mother had made pot roast with potatoes and carrots. There was fresh bread and a salad. Everyone filled their plates and started eating. They talked about normal things. David's son had scored a goal in his soccer game. Sarah's mother was taking a pottery class at the community center. Her father was planning to fix the fence in the backyard. Sarah waited until everyone had finished eating. Her heart was beating fast. She put down her fork and cleared her throat. "I have something to tell everyone," she said. The table got quiet. Everyone looked at her. Her mother's face showed concern right away, like she expected bad news. "I've decided to take some time off from work," Sarah began. "I'm going to study piano seriously for 6 months. There's a program at the conservatory, and I've already been accepted." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever, but it was probably only a few seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. "What do you mean, time off?" her father asked. His voice was sharp. "You're going to quit your job?" "Not quit," Sarah explained quickly. "It's a leave of absence. My job will be waiting for me when I come back." "If you come back," her brother David said. He laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "Sarah, you're having a midlife crisis. You're 32, not 22. This is crazy." "It's not crazy," Sarah said. She tried to keep her voice steady. "This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. I need to do this for myself." Her father put down his glass of water harder than necessary. "This is ridiculous. You have a good job. You make good money. And you want to throw it all away to play piano. Piano is a hobby, Sarah. It's something you do for fun on weekends. It's not a career." "Hobbies don't pay bills," David added. He was shaking his head. "You've got a great career going. Why would you risk that?" Sarah looked at her mother, hoping for support. Her mother had always been the gentler parent, the one who tried to understand. But even her mother looked worried. "Honey, I understand that you love music," her mother said slowly. "But your father and David have a point. You're not a teenager anymore. You have responsibilities. What about your apartment? Your car payment? Health insurance? Have you really thought this through?" "I have thought it through," Sarah insisted. She could feel tears starting to form in her eyes, but she fought them back. "I've saved enough money. I've already arranged the leave from work. I'm enrolled in the program. I start in 2 weeks." "This is insane," her father said. He stood up from the table. "You're going to regret this. Mark my words. In 3 months, you'll be broke and embarrassed, and you'll be begging for your job back." David's wife, who usually stayed quiet during family discussions, spoke up. "Sarah, I don't mean to be harsh, but what exactly do you think will happen after 6 months? Do you think you'll become a concert pianist? Do you think orchestras will be calling you? You're starting way too late for that." "I don't know what will happen," Sarah admitted. Her voice was getting quieter. "But I need to try. I've spent 10 years doing what everyone else thought I should do. I need to do this for me." "That's selfish," David said flatly. "You're being selfish. Mum and Dad sacrificed a lot to send you to college. They paid for business school. And this is how you repay them, by throwing it away." Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. The dining room suddenly felt too small, too hot. Everyone was staring at her. Her father looked angry. Her mother looked disappointed. David looked disgusted. Even David's kids had stopped playing and were watching the adults with confused faces. "I thought you would understand," Sarah said quietly. "I thought my family would support me." "We're trying to protect you from making a huge mistake," her mother said. "That's what families do. They tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it." Sarah stood up from the table. She felt like she might cry, and she didn't want to do that in front of everyone. "I should go," she said. "Sarah, sit down," her father commanded. "We're not finished talking about this." But Sarah was finished. She grabbed her purse and her keys and walked to the front door. Behind her, she could hear her family calling her name, but she didn't turn around. She got in her car and started driving. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove around the city for an hour, her mind spinning. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she was being selfish and foolish. Maybe hobbies should stay hobbies. But then she remembered how she felt when she played piano. She remembered the music filling her chest and making her feel alive. She remembered being 7 years old and hearing her first piano piece and knowing, absolutely knowing, that this was what she was meant to do. Sarah pulled her car into an empty parking lot and turned off the engine. She sat there in the darkness and made a choice. She was going to do this, even if her family didn't understand, even if she failed, even if everyone laughed at her. She was going to try. The dream was too important to let die just because it scared other people. It scared her too, but she was going to do it anyway. 2 weeks passed since that terrible dinner at her parents' house. Sarah had not heard from any of them. No phone calls. No text messages, nothing. The silence hurt more than the arguments had. But Sarah kept moving forward. She had made up her mind, and she was not going to change it. On Monday morning, Sarah walked into her office for the last time before her leave. She had cleaned out her desk over the weekend. Her co-workers knew she was leaving for 6 months, but most of them didn't know why. When people asked, she just said she needed time off for personal reasons. Her boss called her into his office at 10 o'clock. He was a tall man named Mr. Peterson who always wore expensive suits and never smiled much. Sarah sat in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap. "I approved your leave because company policy requires it," Mr. Peterson said. He didn't look at her when he spoke. He was looking at papers on his desk. "But I want to be clear about something. Your position will be held for 6 months. After that, if you're not back, we'll need to fill it permanently." "I understand," Sarah said. "Do you?" Mr. Peterson finally looked up at her. "Because I've seen this before. People take time off thinking they'll figure out their lives, and they come back, broke and desperate. I hope you know what you're doing." Sarah stood up. "Thank you for approving the leave," she said, keeping her voice steady even though she felt angry inside. The rest of the morning was awkward. Her team had planned a small goodbye gathering in the break room. There was a cake and some cards. People smiled at her, but the smiles looked fake. Sarah could hear what they weren't saying out loud. She could see it in their eyes. They thought she was making a mistake. They thought she was having a breakdown. One of her co-workers, a woman named Jennifer, pulled her aside near the end of the gathering. Jennifer had always seemed friendly, but now her face showed something that looked like pity. "Are you sure you're okay?" Jennifer asked quietly. "If you need someone to talk to, I know a good therapist. My sister sees her." Sarah felt her face get hot. "I'm fine," she said. "I'm not having a breakdown. I'm just pursuing something important to me." Jennifer nodded slowly, but Sarah could tell she didn't believe her. "Okay, well, good luck with everything." As Sarah left the office building for the last time, carrying a box with her desk items, she heard 2 of her co-workers talking by the elevator. They didn't see her. "I give her 3 months," one said. "She'll be back here begging for her job." "I heard she's doing some kind of music thing," the other replied. "Like she thinks she's going to be a rock star or something. At 32. It's sad, really." Sarah walked faster, her face burning. She put the box in her car and sat in the driver's seat for a moment. Her hands were shaking. Everyone thought she was crazy. Maybe she was, but she was going to do this anyway. That afternoon, Sarah went to the conservatory for her orientation. The building was old and beautiful, with high ceilings and big windows. The halls smelled like wood, polish, and old books. Sarah could hear music coming from different rooms. Piano, violin, someone singing. The sounds mixed together in the air like a conversation. The program director was a woman named Professor Martinez. She was in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun. Her office was small and filled with books and sheet music. A cello stood in the corner. "Welcome, Sarah," Professor Martinez said, shaking her hand. "I reviewed your application and your audition video. You have raw talent, but you'll need to work very hard. This program is intensive. 8 hours of practice daily, plus theory classes and performance workshops." "I'm ready," Sarah said. Professor Martinez studied her for a moment. "May I ask you something personal? Why are you doing this now?" "Most of our adult students are retired people fulfilling lifelong dreams. You're young. You have a career. This is unusual." Sarah thought about how to answer. "I've been doing what other people wanted for 10 years, she finally said. "Now I need to do what I want, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else." Professor Martinez smiled for the first time. "That's a good answer. But I want you to understand something. This will be hard. Not just the music, but everything around it. People won't understand. They'll question you. They'll doubt you. You'll doubt yourself. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm already experiencing it," Sarah admitted. "My family thinks I'm making a huge mistake. My co-workers think I'm having a mental breakdown. And what do you think?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I think I'll regret it forever if I don't try." Professor Martinez nodded. Then let's begin. The first week was harder than Sarah expected. She woke up at 6 every morning and was at the conservatory by 7. She practiced scales until her fingers hurt. She studied music theory until her head ached. She learned about composers and techniques and performance styles. Everything she had learned as a teenager felt rusty and forgotten. She had to relearn it all. The other students in the program were mostly older, like Professor Martinez had said. There was a retired dentist named Harold who had always wanted to play piano. There was a woman named Grace who was 70 and learning violin. There was a young guy named Marcus who was 24 and had just gotten out of the military. They were all kind to Sarah, but she felt alone. They were doing this for fun, for enrichment. Sarah felt like she was doing it for survival, for her soul. At night, Sarah went back to her apartment, exhausted. Her fingers hurt. Her back hurt from sitting at the piano bench all day. She ate simple dinners alone. Soup from a can, sandwiches. Sometimes she was too tired to cook anything, and just ate crackers. Her phone stayed quiet. Her mother had sent one text message during the first week. "I hope you're okay. We love you, even though we don't understand what you're doing." Sarah had replied thank you, but nothing more. The conversation felt stiff and uncomfortable. Her brother David sent no messages at all. Her father sent nothing. It felt like her family had decided to let her make her mistake in silence. They would be there to say "I told you so" when she failed, but they wouldn't be there while she tried. Money became a worry faster than Sarah expected. The conservatory program was expensive. Rent was due every month. Her car needed gas. Food cost money. Her savings account, which had looked comfortable before, was shrinking quickly. Sarah did the math one night and realized she had enough money for maybe 7 months if she was very careful. After that, she would be broke. She started looking for part-time work. She needed something flexible that wouldn't interfere with her practice schedule. After applying to several places, she got a job at a restaurant called Mourinho's. It was an Italian place downtown that was busy on weekends. They needed someone for the Friday and Saturday night shifts. The pay wasn't great, but the tips were decent. Sarah's first night as a waitress was humbling. She had forgotten how hard restaurant work was. She had waited tables briefly in college, but that felt like a lifetime ago. Now she was older, and her body complained about being on her feet for 6 hours straight. She carried heavy trays. She smiled at customers, even when they were rude. She cleaned up spills and dealt with complaints about food being too cold or too salty. During her third weekend, something happened that made everything worse. Sarah was taking an order from a table near the window when she heard a familiar laugh. She turned and saw 4 people from her old office sitting at a table across the room. Jennifer was there, along with Mark from accounting, and 2 others Sarah recognized. Sarah's stomach dropped. She tried to stay calm. She walked over to their table with her notepad, keeping her face neutral. "Hi, welcome to Mourinho's," she started to say. But Jennifer's eyes went wide. "Sarah," Jennifer said, her voice too loud. "Oh my God, Sarah. You work here?" The whole table stared at her. Sarah could feel her face turning red. "Yes," she said simply. "What can I get you all to drink?" There was an awkward silence. Mark looked uncomfortable. One of the other women looked away. Jennifer's face showed shock mixed with what looked like satisfaction, like she had been proven right about something. "I'll have a glass of white wine," Jennifer finally said. Her voice was different now, almost pitying. "The cheapest one is fine." Sarah took the rest of their orders and walked away. Her hands were shaking. She could hear them start to whisper as soon as she left the table. She didn't need to hear the words to know what they were saying. She could imagine it perfectly. Can you believe it? She quit her job to play piano, and now she's waiting tables. "I told you, it wouldn't work out." The rest of that shift felt endless. Every time Sarah had to go near their table, she felt their eyes on her. When they left, Jennifer made sure to be extra nice, which somehow felt worse than being rude. "Good to see you, Sarah. Take care of yourself, okay?" The tip they left was generous, which made Sarah feel even worse. It felt like pity money. That night, Sarah sat in her apartment and cried. She hadn't cried since that dinner at her parents' house, but now all the emotions came flooding out. She felt humiliated. She felt small. Everyone had been right about her. She was a 32-year-old woman with a business degree, waiting tables and chasing a childhood dream. What was she doing? Her phone was on the table. She could call her father right now. She could tell him he was right. She could go back to her old job and pretend this never happened. Mr. Peterson had said she had 6 months. She had only used. She could still go back. Sarah picked up her phone. She stared at it for a long time. Then she set it back down. No, she wasn't going back, not yet. She had promised herself 6 months, and she was going to finish it. Even if everyone laughed at her. Even if she failed. Even if her hands hurt and her body ached and her bank account emptied. She was going to see this through. The next morning, Sarah woke up early. She made herself breakfast. She practiced her scales. Then she went to the conservatory and practiced for 8 hours straight. Her performance was improving. Professor Martinez had said so. Sarah could hear it herself. The music was coming easier now. Her fingers remembered what to do. The notes flowed. She would keep going. Day by day. Practice by practice. Shift by shift at the restaurant. She would keep going until the 6 months ended. And then she would see what happened next. But deep down, in a quiet place she didn't want to look at too closely, Sarah wondered if everyone was right. Maybe this was just a hobby. Maybe she was fooling herself. Maybe she should have left it alone. She pushed those thoughts away and focused on the music. That was all she could do. Just focus on the music and keep going, one day at a time. 3 months had passed since Sarah started at the conservatory. It was a cold Tuesday morning in November when Professor Martinez called her into her office. Sarah felt nervous as she walked down the hall. She wondered if something was wrong. Maybe her progress wasn't good enough. Maybe they were going to ask her to leave the program. But Professor Martinez was smiling when Sarah entered. "Sit down, Sarah. I have an opportunity for you." Sarah sat in the wooden chair across from the desk. What kind of opportunity? The conservatory has a partnership with several community organizations, Professor Martinez explained. We send students to perform at different places around the city. Schools, libraries, community centers. It's part of our outreach program. This Thursday, we need someone to play at a memory care facility. It's a nursing home for people with dementia and Alzheimer's. Would you be interested? Sarah's first thought was no. She had been working so hard on her technique and her performance skills. Playing for elderly people in a nursing home seemed like a step backward. It wasn't what she had in mind when she imagined performing. She wanted to play in concert halls, not nursing homes. Professor Martinez seemed to read her thoughts. "I know it's not glamorous," she said, "but it's an important part of being a musician. Music isn't just for concert halls, it's for everyone, everywhere, and I think you might find it meaningful." Sarah didn't want to seem ungrateful or difficult. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." "Good. The facility is called Sunset Gardens. It's about 20 minutes from here. Thursday at 2 o'clock. Play for about 45 minutes. Choose pieces that are accessible. Nothing too complex or dark. Think about music from the 1940s and 1950s. That's when many of the residents were young." Sarah spent the next 2 days preparing. She chose a mix of classical pieces and popular songs from decades ago. Pieces by Chopin and Beethoven. Some old jazz standards. A few songs that her grandmother used to sing. She practiced until she could play them all smoothly, without thinking too much. On Thursday, Sarah drove to Sunset Gardens. It was a long, single-story building surrounded by bare trees. The parking lot had spaces marked for visitors. Inside, the building smelled like cleaning products, and something else Sarah couldn't identify. Maybe medicine. Maybe age. A woman with a name tag that said Linda Activities Director met her at the front desk. Linda was cheerful and talked quickly. "Oh, we're so glad you're here. We don't get many visitors, especially not musicians. The residents will love this. Follow me." Linda led Sarah down a long hallway. They passed rooms where old people sat in beds or wheelchairs. Some stared at televisions. Some slept, some just looked at the walls. Sarah felt uncomfortable. She had never spent much time around very old people. Her own grandparents had died when she was young. They entered a common room with chairs arranged in a semicircle. In the center was an old, upright piano. It looked even worse than the one in her parents' garage. Some of the keys were chipped. The wood was scratched and faded. But when Sarah pressed a few keys, it was in tune. Someone had maintained it. "The residents will be here in about 10 minutes, Linda said. "We're bringing everyone who's able to come. Some of them won't respond much. Don't take it personally. Just play and enjoy yourself." Linda left, and Sarah sat alone at the piano. She looked around the room. The walls were painted a pale yellow. There were pictures of flowers in cheap frames. A calendar showed November 2024. The chairs had thin cushions and metal frames. Everything looked clean but worn out, used up. The residents started arriving. Nurses and aides helped them into the room. Some walked slowly with walkers. Others came in wheelchairs. One man was pushed in on a bed because he couldn't sit up. Sarah counted about 20 people. Most of them looked confused about why they were there. Some talked to themselves. One woman kept asking where her daughter was. Linda introduced Sarah to the group. "Everyone, this is Sarah. She's going to play piano for us today. Let's give her a nice welcome." A few people clapped weakly. Most just sat there, staring at nothing or at the floor. Sarah felt a wave of sadness wash over her. These people had been young once. They had lives and families and dreams. Now they sat in this yellow room, their minds failing, their memories disappearing. She wondered if they even understood that someone was about to play music for them. Sarah started with a Chopin nocturne. It was a piece she loved, gentle and flowing like water. As she played, she tried not to look at the residents. She focused on the keys and the music. But after a few minutes, she glanced up. Most people looked the same as before. Blank faces. Empty eyes. One man had fallen asleep. A woman near the back was crying softly, though Sarah didn't know why. But one person caught Sarah's attention. In the front row, there was a woman in a wheelchair. She was very thin, with white hair pulled back from her face. Her hands rested in her lap, twisted with arthritis. But what struck Sarah was her eyes. She was staring straight ahead with no expression at all. It was like looking at a statue, like no one was home behind those eyes. Sarah finished the Chopin piece and moved on to something more upbeat. A jazz standard called It Had to Be You. It was a happy song from the 1920s. She played it with energy, trying to lighten the mood in the room. And then something extraordinary happened. The woman in the front row, the one who had been staring at nothing, suddenly moved. Her eyes focused. Her head turned slightly toward the piano. Her mouth opened just a little bit. Sarah noticed but kept playing, not wanting to break whatever was happening. As Sarah continued the song, the woman's lips began to move. At first, Sarah thought she was just moving her mouth randomly. But then she realized the woman was forming words. She was mouthing the lyrics to the song. Sarah's heart started beating faster. She kept playing, watching the woman. And then, quietly at first, but growing stronger, the woman began to sing. Her voice was thin and shaky, but she knew every word. She sang about how it had to be him, wonderful him, it had to be him. Her eyes were still focused now, looking at Sarah, really seeing her. The room became silent except for the piano and the woman's voice. Other residents turned to look at her. The nurses stopped what they were doing. Linda stood in the doorway with her hand over her mouth. When Sarah finished the song, she immediately transitioned into another one the woman might know. "Someone to watch over me." And again, the woman sang along. Her voice was getting stronger. She smiled. It was a real smile, full of memory and emotion. Sarah played 3 more songs from that era, and the woman sang along to all of them. Sometimes she got words wrong, but she knew the melodies perfectly. Her whole body had changed. She was alive now, present. There, when Sarah finally stopped playing, the woman looked directly at her. "That was beautiful," she said clearly. "Thank you." Then, as quickly as she had emerged, she seemed to fade back. Her eyes lost focus. Her head dropped forward. She was gone again, back to wherever she had been before. The room erupted in applause. The nurses were crying. Linda rushed over to Sarah. "That was Margaret," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "She hasn't spoken in 4 months. Not a single word. We thought we'd lost her completely." A nurse named Patricia came over, wiping her eyes. "Margaret used to be a singer," she explained. "Back in the 1940s, she sang with a big band. We learned about it from her daughter, but she hasn't sung or spoken since August. We honestly thought she'd never come back." Sarah felt stunned. She looked at Margaret, who was back to staring at nothing. But for those few minutes, she had been completely there. The music had brought her back, even if only temporarily. After the performance, Margaret's daughter arrived at the facility. Her name was Joyce, and she was in her 60s. Linda had called her right after the performance to tell her what happened. Joyce found Sarah in the hallway, preparing to leave. "You're the piano player?" Joyce asked, tears streaming down her face. "You brought my mother back. I haven't heard her voice in 4 months. I thought I'd never hear it again." Joyce hugged Sarah tightly. Sarah didn't know what to say. "I just played some songs," she finally managed. "No," Joyce said firmly. "You did more than that. You gave me a gift. You gave me my mother back, even if just for a few minutes. Do you have any idea what that means? In these last stages of dementia, every moment of connection is precious. Every word, every smile, every sign that they're still in there somewhere. You gave me that today." Sarah drove home in a daze. She couldn't stop thinking about Margaret, about how her eyes had focused, about her voice singing those old songs, about the way she had smiled and said thank you before disappearing back into the fog of her disease. That night, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop. She started researching. She typed music and dementia into the search engine and was shocked by what she found. There were hundreds of articles and studies. Scientists had discovered that music accessed parts of the brain that remained intact even when memory failed. People who couldn't remember their own names could sing songs from their youth. People who couldn't speak could hum melodies. Sarah read article after article. She watched videos of people with severe dementia coming alive when they heard music from their past. She read about music therapy programs and their effects on cognitive function, mood, and quality of life. She read testimonials from families who said music was the only thing that still reached their loved ones. She stayed up until 3 in the morning, reading and taking notes. Her mind was racing. This was something real, something important. Music wasn't just art or entertainment. It was a bridge. It was a key that could unlock doors that everyone thought were permanently closed. Sarah thought about her family's words. Just a hobby, not practical, won't pay bills. But what she had seen today wasn't a hobby. It was powerful. It was meaningful. It changed lives, even if just for a moment. For the first time since she left her job, Sarah felt like she understood why she was doing this. It wasn't just about fulfilling her own dreams. It wasn't just about playing beautiful music in beautiful concert halls. There was something bigger here. Something that mattered in a deep, human way. She finally went to bed around 4 in the morning. But she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the image of Margaret's eyes focusing, her mouth forming words, her voice singing. That moment had changed something in Sarah. She wasn't sure what yet, but she knew nothing would be the same. The next morning, Sarah went back to the conservatory with a new energy. Professor Martinez noticed immediately. "You look different," she said. "How did yesterday go?" Sarah told her everything. About Margaret, about the research she had done, about the ideas forming in her mind. Professor Martinez listened carefully, nodding. "This happens sometimes," Professor Martinez said when Sarah finished. "A musician discovers that music is bigger than performance. It's about connection, about healing, about being human. Welcome to the real purpose of what we do." Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Margaret. Every morning when she woke up, the memory of that moment played in her mind. Margaret's voice singing, her eyes focusing, the way she had said thank you before fading away again. That one experience had changed everything for Sarah. She started going back to Sunset Gardens every week. At first, Linda, the activities director, was surprised. "You want to come back?" she asked. "You don't have to. The conservatory only required one visit." "I know," Sarah said. "But I want to. If that's okay, it's more than okay. The residents would love it. And Margaret's daughter keeps calling to ask when you're coming back." Every Thursday at 2 o'clock, Sarah played piano at Sunset Gardens. She learned which songs the residents responded to best. Big band music from the 1940s, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, old hymns and folk songs. Sometimes she could see people tapping their feet or moving their hands. Sometimes people sang along, not always Margaret, but others too. Even people who the staff said never responded to anything. Sarah started keeping a notebook. She wrote down which residents responded to which types of music. She wrote down what she observed. Mr. Chen, who usually sat silently, always smiled when she played ragtime music. Mrs. Rodriguez swayed and hummed during anything with a waltz rhythm. Tom, the man who had been a soldier, became calm and peaceful when she played patriotic songs. She spent hours in the library and online, reading everything she could find about music and the brain. She learned that musical memory was stored differently than other types of memory. It was distributed across multiple brain regions. That's why people with dementia could remember songs even when they couldn't remember their own children's faces. She read about a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which was one of the first areas damaged by Alzheimer's disease. That's where recent memories were stored. But musical memories lived in different places, in parts of the brain that dementia affected later, or not at all. Music could reach people even in the late stages of the disease. Sarah also learned about dopamine and how music triggered its release. Dopamine was the chemical that made people feel pleasure and reward. For people with dementia, who often felt confused and frightened, that burst of dopamine from familiar music could be like sunshine breaking through clouds. The more Sarah learned, the more excited she became. This wasn't just interesting science. This was practical. This was something that could actually help people. And nobody seemed to be doing enough with it. One evening, after her shift at Marino's restaurant, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and notebook spread out around her. She was tired from being on her feet all night, but her mind was racing. She started writing. Not notes this time, but something more organized. Something with structure. She wrote about what she had observed at Sunset Gardens. She wrote about the research she had read. She wrote about how music could be used intentionally as a non-drug therapy for people with cognitive decline. She wrote about what such a program might look like. Scheduled sessions. Personalized music selections based on each resident's history. Training for activity staff on how to incorporate music into daily care. By 3 in the morning, Sarah had written a 15-page proposal. She called it Memory Through Melody, a pilot program for music-based intervention in elder care. She felt both excited and terrified. This was real. This was something she actually wanted to do. The next morning, despite having slept only 3 hours, Sarah went to see Professor Martinez. She brought her proposal with her. Professor Martinez read through it carefully while Sarah sat nervously in the chair across from her desk. It took 20 minutes. Finally, Professor Martinez looked up. "This is good work, Sarah," she said. "This is really good. Have you thought about what you want to do with this?" "I want to make it real," Sarah said. "I want to actually do this. Not just at Sunset Gardens, but at other facilities too. I think this could help a lot of people." Professor Martinez leaned back in her chair. "You understand this would be a significant undertaking. You would need funding. You would need support from facility administrators. You would need to prove that it works, and you would need to commit to it fully." "I know," Sarah said, "but I think it's worth it. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing." Professor Martinez smiled. "I think you might be right. Let me be honest with you, Sarah. When you first came to this program, I wasn't sure you would make it. You seemed uncertain. But something has changed in you. You've found your purpose. That's rare and valuable." With Professor Martinez's encouragement, Sarah revised her proposal. She made it more professional. She added more research citations. She created a budget showing what a program like this would cost. She outlined the benefits, not just for residents, but for facilities. Reduced anxiety and agitation in residents meant less need for medications. Improved mood meant better quality of life. Better engagement meant happier families. Then, Sarah did something that terrified her. She started sending the proposal to nursing homes and memory care facilities around the city. She researched which facilities had the best reputations. She found the names of administrators and directors. She sent personalized cover letters explaining who she was and what she wanted to do. The first rejection came within 2 days. "Thank you for your interest. But we already have a robust activities program and are not looking to add new programming at this time." The second rejection came 3 days later. "We appreciate your proposal, but do not have the budget for additional programming." The third rejection was more blunt. "We don't feel that music programming is a priority for our residents." Sarah kept sending proposals. She sent them to 30 different facilities over the course of 2 weeks. The rejections kept coming. "Too expensive." "Not interested." "No budget." "Already have something similar." "Not what we're looking for right now." 29 facilities said no. Sarah felt each rejection like a punch to the stomach. Maybe this wasn't going to work. Maybe it was a stupid idea. Maybe she should just focus on finishing her conservatory program and forget about this whole thing. But then facility number 30 responded. It was a small nursing home called Riverside Manor on the other side of the city. The director, a woman named Carol Williams, wanted to meet with Sarah in person. Sarah drove to Riverside Manor on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The building was smaller than Sunset Gardens and older. The paint was peeling in some places. The parking lot had potholes, but inside, it was clean, and the staff seemed caring. Sarah could hear them talking kindly to residents as she walked down the hall to Carol's office. Carol was a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a tired smile. Her office was small and crowded with files and paperwork. A picture of 3 kids sat on her desk. "Thank you for coming," Carol said, shaking Sarah's hand. "I read your proposal. Tell me more about yourself." Sarah explained her background, how she had left her corporate job to study music, how she had played at Sunset Gardens and seen Margaret respond to the music, how she had started researching and realized music could be a powerful tool for people with dementia. Carol listened carefully. When Sarah finished, Carol sighed. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said. "I don't have much budget. This is a small facility. We're not fancy. Most of our residents are on Medicaid. We do our best, but we're always stretched thin." Sarah's heart sank. This was going to be another rejection, but Carol continued. "However, I've seen what you're talking about. My own mother had Alzheimer's. In her last years, music was the only thing that reached her. I would play her favorite gospel songs, and she would come back to me, just for a little while. So I believe in what you're proposing." Sarah felt hope rising in her chest. "I can give you 1 hour a week," Carol said. "Wednesday afternoons at 2. I can't pay you much. Maybe $50 per session, and I can only commit to a 3-month trial. If I see results, we can talk about continuing. If not, we part ways. Does that work for you?" $50 a week was almost nothing. Sarah made more than that in tips on one Friday night at the restaurant. But this wasn't about the money. This was about proving that her idea could work. "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "That works." Carol smiled. "Good. We have an old piano in the main common room. I can't promise it's in great shape, but you can use it. When can you start?" "Next Wednesday," Sarah said. They shook hands. As Sarah drove home, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was really happening. She was going to try to make this work. But could she? What if it didn't help anyone? What if the residents at Riverside Manor didn't respond the way Margaret had? What if she failed and proved that this was all just a foolish dream? That night, Sarah called her mother for the first time in weeks. The phone rang 4 times before her mother answered. "Sarah," her mother said. She sounded surprised. "Is everything okay?" "I'm fine, Mum," Sarah said. "I just wanted to tell you something." She explained about Margaret, about her research, about the proposal she had written, about Riverside Manor agreeing to a trial program. Her mother listened without interrupting. When Sarah finished, there was silence on the line. Then her mother spoke. "That sounds meaningful, honey," she said quietly. "That sounds like something that really matters." It wasn't full support. It wasn't an apology for the things said at that terrible dinner months ago, but it was something. It was a crack in the wall. "Thanks, Mom," Sarah said. "Will you call me next week and tell me how it goes?" her mother asked. "Yes," Sarah said. "I will." After they hung up, Sarah sat on her couch, feeling emotional. She thought about how much her life had changed in 4 months. She had gone from a marketing executive in nice suits to a conservatory student waiting tables on weekends. She had gone from living a life everyone approved of to living a life everyone questioned. But she had also found something real, something that mattered. When she played piano for Margaret and watched her come back to life, Sarah had felt more useful than she had in all her years at the marketing firm. All those presentations and campaigns and meetings had never made her feel like her work actually changed someone's life. Now she had a chance to do something that really helped people. It was small. It was just 1 hour a week at one small nursing home. But it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, it could become something bigger. Sarah opened her notebook and started planning for her first session at Riverside Manor. She needed to meet the residents first. Learn their backgrounds, find out what music they might remember from their youth. She needed to create a list of songs that would cover different eras and styles. She needed to prepare herself to handle whatever happened, even if nothing happened at all. As she worked, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was supposed to be doing. It didn't matter that her bank account was shrinking. It didn't matter that people thought she was crazy. It didn't matter that she was eating ramen noodles for dinner most nights because she couldn't afford much else. What mattered was that she had found her purpose, and she was going to fight for it. Sarah's first session at Riverside Manor did not go the way she had hoped. She arrived on Wednesday afternoon with carefully prepared song selections and high expectations. The piano in the common room was worse than she expected. 3 keys didn't work at all. The sound was tinny and weak, but she told herself it would be fine. The music was what mattered, not the instrument. Carol introduced her to the residents. There were about 15 people in the room. Most of them looked at Sarah with confusion or no expression at all. One man kept shouting, "Go home. Go home," over and over. A woman was crying and asking for her mother, even though she was at least 80 years old herself. Sarah started playing. She chose upbeat songs from the 1950s, the kind that had worked well at Sunset Gardens. But nothing happened. The residents sat there, mostly unresponsive. The man kept shouting. The woman kept crying. Nobody sang along. Nobody smiled. After 45 minutes, Sarah's hands were shaking, and her confidence was broken. She finished her last song and packed up her things. "That was nice, dear," Carol said kindly, as Sarah prepared to leave. But Sarah could see the doubt in Carol's eyes. This was supposed to prove that music therapy worked. Instead, it had proven nothing at all. Sarah drove home feeling crushed. Maybe Margaret had been a fluke. Maybe what happened with her was unusual and wouldn't happen with other people. Maybe this whole idea was stupid. The next week was worse. Only 10 residents came to the session. Sarah tried different songs, different styles. She tried talking to the residents between songs, trying to engage them, but the response was minimal. One woman tapped her foot a little bit. That was it. That was the only sign that anyone was even listening. After the 3rd week, Carol pulled Sarah aside. "I'm not sure this is working," Carol said gently. "I want to believe in it, but I'm not seeing the results you described in your proposal. The residents don't seem engaged. Maybe we should reconsider." "Please," Sarah said, hearing the desperation in her own voice. "Give me more time. Sometimes it takes a while for people to respond. Let me finish the 3 months we agreed on." Carol hesitated, but finally nodded. "Okay, but I need to see some kind of improvement. I can't justify the expense otherwise, even though it's small." Sarah left Riverside Manor that day feeling defeated. She had 2 months left to prove this worked, or the program would be cancelled, and she had no idea how to make it better. Money was becoming a serious problem too. Sarah's savings account was almost empty. She had been living on her savings and her weekend tips from Marino's, but it wasn't enough. Rent was due in a week, and she didn't have enough to cover it. She would need to use her credit card, which was already carrying a balance from the conservatory tuition. Sarah did the math one night and felt sick. She was going into debt. Real debt. The kind that would take years to pay off. Her 6-month sabbatical from work was ending in 2 months. Mr. Peterson had been clear. Come back by then, or lose her job permanently. Sarah lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She could go back to her old job. Mr. Peterson would probably take her back if she called right now. She could return to her desk, her salary, her comfortable life. She would have money again. She could pay off her credit card. She could stop eating ramen noodles and afford real groceries. But the thought made her feel hollow inside. Going back felt like giving up, like admitting that everyone had been right about her. Her father, her brother, her co-workers. Just a hobby, they had said. You'll be back. The next Friday at Marino's, something happened that made everything even harder. Sarah was carrying a tray of pasta dishes when she heard a loud laugh from a corner booth. She looked over and felt her stomach drop. It was David, her brother. He was there with his wife and another couple Sarah didn't recognize. Sarah considered asking another server to take their table, but the restaurant was busy and it would look strange. She took a deep breath and walked over. Hi. Welcome to Marino's, she started, but David interrupted her. Sarah? He looked shocked. You still work here? I thought this was temporary. His wife, Jessica, looked uncomfortable. Hi, Sarah, she said quietly. It is temporary, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. What can I get you to drink? David shook his head slowly. This is sad, Sarah. Really sad. You had a great career. And now, you're waiting tables. Mum said you're doing some piano thing at a nursing home. That's what you gave everything up for. The other couple at the table looked away awkwardly. Sarah felt her face burning. I'm pursuing something important to me, Sarah said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted it to. Important. David laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're 32 years old, broke, waiting tables, and playing piano for old people who probably can't even hear you. That's not important. That's delusional, David, Jessica said quietly, touching his arm. Don't, but David kept going. Dad was right. You're having some kind of crisis. You need to grow up and face reality. Come back to your job before you completely destroy your life. Sarah's hands were shaking. She wanted to say something cutting and strong. She wanted to defend herself. But no words came. Instead, she just said, I'll give you a few minutes to look at the menu, and walked away. She went to the bathroom and locked herself in a stall. She sat on the closed toilet seat and cried as quietly as she could. She couldn't serve their table. She couldn't face David again. She found her manager and said she felt sick, which wasn't really a lie. Her manager, annoyed but sympathetic, let another server take over the table. Sarah went home early. She sat in her dark apartment and felt like she was drowning. Her own brother thought she was delusional. Her family thought she was destroying her life. And maybe they were right. What did she have to show for the last 5 months? A piano program that didn't work. A pile of debt, calloused hands from carrying dinner plates, and a dream that seemed more and more foolish every day. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her mother. David told me he saw you tonight. Please call me. Sarah didn't call. She couldn't face another conversation about how she was making a mistake. She turned off her phone and went to bed, even though it was only 9 o'clock. The next morning, Sarah almost didn't go to her conservatory practice. What was the point? She wasn't going to be a concert pianist. She wasn't good enough for that, and her therapy program was failing. Maybe she should just quit everything, but force of habit got her up. She showered. She dressed. She drove to the conservatory. She sat at the piano and started her warm-up exercises. Her fingers moved automatically through the scales and arpeggios she had practiced hundreds of times. Professor Martinez came into the practice room. "Sarah, do you have a moment?" Sarah followed her to the office. She expected another lecture about commitment or technique. Instead, Professor Martinez asked, "How is your program at Riverside Manor going?" Sarah felt tears threatening again. "It's not working," she admitted. "The residents aren't responding. The director wants to see results, but I'm not getting any. I don't know what I'm doing wrong." Professor Martinez was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When I was your age, I wanted to be a solo cellist. I practiced 8 hours a day. I auditioned for orchestras. I was rejected from all of them. I thought I was a failure." Sarah looked up, surprised. Professor Martinez never talked about her own life. "Then I started teaching," Professor Martinez continued. "At first, I thought teaching was what you did when you failed as a performer, but I was wrong. I discovered that teaching was its own kind of performance. I helped students find their voices, I watched them grow, and I realized that success doesn't always look the way we expect it to. But I'm not even succeeding at this," Sarah said. "The residents don't respond. It's not working." "Maybe you're measuring success wrong," Professor Martinez said. "Maybe it takes more than 3 weeks. Maybe it takes a different approach. Or maybe success isn't about the residents responding the way you want. Maybe it's about showing up and trying, even when it's hard." Sarah wanted to believe her, but it was hard to feel hopeful when everything seemed to be falling apart. That week, Sarah did something different at Riverside Manor. Instead of just playing for the group, she spent time before the session talking to the nursing staff. She asked about individual residents. What did they used to do? What did they like? What made them happy? She learned that the man who shouted, "Go home," used to be a truck driver who loved country music. She learned that the crying woman had been a church organist who played hymns every Sunday for 40 years. She learned that a quiet woman in the corner had been a dance instructor who taught ballroom dancing in the 1960s. Sarah adjusted her playlist. She played country songs for the truck driver. She played hymns for the organist. She played big band dance music for the dance instructor. And something small happened. The truck driver stopped shouting for a few minutes. The organist stopped crying and hummed along to Amazing Grace. The dance instructor moved her hands slightly, like she was holding an invisible partner. It wasn't much. It wasn't like Margaret's transformation, but it was something. It was a small crack in the wall. Sarah drove home that day, feeling a tiny bit of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe it just needed more time and patience. Maybe she needed to stop expecting dramatic results and learn to value small moments. But that hope was tested again and again. Bills kept piling up. Credit card debt kept growing. Her apartment felt smaller and dingier every day. She had holes in 2 pairs of shoes but couldn't afford new ones. She ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner most nights. She was tired all the time from working at the restaurant on top of everything else. One night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her bills spread out in front of her. She had $63 in her checking account. Rent was due in 5 days, and she was $400 short. She could put it on her credit card, but that card was almost maxed out. Her other credit card was already maxed out. She had no safety net left. Sarah picked up her phone. She pulled up Mr. Peterson's email address. She started typing. "Dear Mr. Peterson, I would like to discuss returning to my position earlier than planned. .. Her finger hovered over the send button. One click, and this would all be over. She could go back. She could have money again. Security again. She could stop struggling. But before she pressed send, she thought about the truck driver at Riverside Manor who had stopped shouting when she played country music. She thought about the organist who had hummed along to the hymn. She thought about Margaret at Sunset Gardens, singing with her eyes focused and alive. Sarah closed the email without sending it. She put her phone down. She didn't know how she was going to pay rent. She didn't know how she was going to make this work. But she knew she couldn't quit yet. Not yet. She had to try just a little bit longer. She would figure out the rent somehow. She would pick up more shifts at the restaurant. She would find a way. She had to, because giving up now meant admitting that dreams were stupid and impractical, and that hobbies should stay hobbies, and she wasn't ready to admit that yet. Sarah decided to give herself exactly 3 more months. That was it. 3 months to make this work, or admit defeat, and go back to her old life. She picked up extra shifts at Mourinho's. She worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, now, sometimes pulling double shifts. Her feet ached constantly. Her back hurt. But she made enough intips to scrape by. At Riverside Manor, things were slowly improving. Not dramatically, but in small ways that kept Sarah going. The truck driver who used to shout now sat quietly during her sessions. The church organist sometimes sang along to hymns in a wavering voice. A man named George, who had been a jazz musician, tapped his fingers on his wheelchair armrest when Sarah played Duke Ellington. One Wednesday, Carol came to watch the session. She stood in the back of the room with her arms crossed, observing. Sarah tried not to feel nervous. She played a mix of songs, watching the residents carefully. When she finished, Carol motioned for her to come to her office. "I see what you're doing," Carol said. "It's subtle, but I can see the residents are more engaged than they were at the beginning. You've personalized the music to them." "That's good." Sarah felt relief flood through her. "I want to continue the program," Carol said, "but I need you to do something for me. I need documentation. I need proof that this is working. My board of directors needs to see concrete evidence before they'll approve any funding beyond these 3 months. Can you do that?" "What kind of documentation?" Sarah asked. "Video would be best. Short clips showing residents responding to the music. Before and after kind of thing. Can you film some of your sessions?" "With permission from families, of course," Sarah agreed immediately. That weekend, she bought a cheap video camera, using money she had been saving for groceries. She would eat rice and beans for the next 2 weeks. The camera was more important. She started filming her sessions at both Riverside Manor and Sunset Gardens. At first, she just set up the camera on a tripod and let it record. But then she realized she needed to be more intentional. She needed to show specific moments, specific changes. She filmed George before the music started, staring blankly ahead. Then she filmed him during a jazz song, his fingers tapping, his foot moving slightly, a small smile on his face. She filmed the church organist sitting silently, then singing along to How Great Thou Art with tears streaming down her face. She filmed a woman named Dorothy who never spoke, humming along to Somewhere Over the Rainbow. But the most powerful footage came from Sunset Gardens. Margaret, who Sarah still visited every Thursday, had good days and bad days. Some weeks, she was completely unresponsive, but other weeks, she would come alive during the music. Sarah captured one of these moments on video. Margaret sitting motionless, then slowly focusing as Sarah played It Had to Be You. Margaret beginning to sing, her voice growing stronger. Margaret smiling and swaying slightly. Margaret saying, "Thank you, dear," at the end. Sarah also filmed a man named Robert who had been an engineer before Alzheimer's. His daughter had told Sarah that he used to conduct imaginary orchestras while listening to classical music at home. Sarah didn't believe it would happen at the facility, but she filmed him anyway. When she played Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, Robert's hands began to move. He was conducting. His movements were precise and timed perfectly to the music. His eyes were focused. For those 4 minutes, he wasn't a confused old man with dementia. He was a conductor leading an orchestra. Another powerful moment came with a woman named Helen who had advanced Parkinson's disease on top of dementia. Her hands shook violently all the time. She couldn't feed herself. She couldn't hold a cup. The tremors were constant and severe. But when Sarah played a waltz, Helen's hands began to move in time to the music. The shaking became rhythm. Her trembling hands looked like they were dancing. When the music stopped, the violent shaking returned. But for those 3 minutes, the music had given her control. Over the next month, Sarah collected dozens of these moments. She had hours of footage. Some of it was dramatic, like Robert conducting or Margaret singing. Some of it was subtle, like a foot tapping or a head nodding. But all of it showed the same thing. Music reached people in ways that nothing else could. Sarah spent evenings editing the footage on her laptop. She taught herself basic video editing using free software. She created a 15-minute compilation showing the most powerful moments. She added simple text explaining each person's condition and what was happening in the video. She kept the editing minimal. The footage spoke for itself. She titled it, Memory Through Melody, Musical Intervention as Non-Pharmaceutical Therapy. Then she did something that scared her. She submitted it to a regional healthcare conference that was happening in 2 months. The conference focused on innovations in elder care and dementia treatment. The deadline for submissions was in 3 days. Sarah wrote a proposal explaining her program and included a link to the video. She pressed submit and then immediately felt foolish. Why would a healthcare conference accept a video from her? She wasn't a doctor or a researcher. She was just a piano student with a camera and a dream. They would probably delete her submission without even watching it. 2 weeks later, Sarah got an email. She almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But the subject line said, Healthcare Innovations Conference, Presentation Acceptance. Her hands shook as she opened it. Dear Ms. Chen, we are pleased to inform you that your proposal Memory Through Melody, Musical Intervention as Non-Pharmaceutical Therapy, has been accepted for presentation at our annual conference. Your presentation is scheduled for Saturday, March 15th at 2 p.m. in Conference Room B. You will have 30 minutes for your presentation, plus 15 minutes for questions. Sarah read the email 3 times to make sure it was real. They had accepted her. A real healthcare conference wanted her to present her work. She felt excitement and terror in equal measure. She told Professor Martinez, who was thrilled. This is wonderful, Sarah. This could open real doors for you, she told Carol at Riverside Manor, who hugged her tightly. I knew this was important, Carol said. I knew it. She even called her mother. It was the first real conversation they'd had since that brief call months ago. Mum, something happened, Sarah said, and told her about the conference. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Your father and I would like to come to your presentation, if that's okay. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. Really? Really? We want to see what you've been working on. We want to understand. Sarah spent the next 6 weeks preparing. She rewrote her presentation a dozen times. She practiced delivering it out loud in her apartment. She made slides with charts and statistics from the research she had read. She timed everything carefully to fit in 30 minutes. The night before the conference, Sarah couldn't sleep. What if no one came to her session? What if people walked out? What if someone in the audience was an expert who proved she was wrong about everything? What if she froze up and couldn't speak? The conference was held at a large hotel in the city. Sarah arrived early, wearing the one professional outfit she still owned from her marketing days. The jacket was a little tight now, and the pants were slightly worn, but it was the best she had. She found Conference Room B. It was a medium-sized room with rows of chairs facing a podium and a screen. At 1:45, 15 minutes before her presentation, the room was empty. Sarah's heart sank. No one was coming. But then, slowly, people started arriving. First a few, then more. Healthcare workers in scrubs. Administrators in business clothes. A few people who looked like researchers or doctors. By 2 o'clock, every seat was full. There were even people standing in the back. Sarah counted at least 80 people. And in the front row, she saw her mother and father. Her father looked uncomfortable in his suit. Her mother smiled at her encouragingly. Next to them was David, her brother, looking awkward but present. Sarah's hands were shaking as she walked to the podium. She looked out at all those faces staring at her, waiting. She took a deep breath. My name is Sarah Chen, she began. 6 months ago, I was a marketing executive. Today, I want to talk to you about how music can reach people with dementia in ways that medicine cannot. She told them about Margaret. About that first moment when Margaret sang. About the research she had done. About the program she had developed. Then she played the video. The room was completely silent as the footage played. Sarah watched people's faces. She saw surprise. She saw emotion. When Robert conducted his imaginary orchestra on screen, Someone in the audience whispered, "Oh my God." When Helen's shaking hands moved in rhythm to the music, several people leaned forward in their seats. When the video ended, Sarah talked about what she had learned. How musical memory was different from other memory. How personalized music selections mattered. How consistency and patience were key. How this wasn't a cure, but it was a connection. It was a way to reach people who seemed unreachable. She finished her presentation exactly at 30 minutes. There was a moment of silence. Then the room erupted in applause. People stood up. It was a standing ovation. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. The question period was supposed to be 15 minutes, but went for 30. A neurologist asked about brain imaging studies. A nursing home director asked about implementation logistics. A social worker asked about training requirements. An activities director asked for contact information. When the session finally ended, people crowded around Sarah. They gave her business cards. They asked questions. They took her contact information. A director from a large memory care facility said, "We need this program. Call me next week, and let's talk." A hospital administrator said, "We're looking at non-pharmaceutical interventions. This fits perfectly." By the time Sarah could finally leave, she had collected 43 business cards and a notebook full of contact information. Her head was spinning. Her parents waited outside the conference room. Her father walked up to her, and for a moment Sarah wasn't sure what he would say. Then he hugged her tightly. "I was wrong," he said into her shoulder. "I was so wrong about this. This isn't a hobby. This is real. This is important. I'm proud of you." Sarah started crying again. David hugged her too. "I'm sorry for what I said at the restaurant," he said quietly. "I didn't understand. I get it now." Her mother just held her and cried happy tears. That night, Sarah sat in her apartment looking at all the business cards spread on her kitchen table. Her phone kept buzzing with emails from people who had attended her presentation. A local news station wanted to do a story. A university wanted to talk about research collaboration. 12 different facilities wanted information about starting programs. Sarah looked at her laptop screen, where she had pulled up her old resignation email to Mr. Peterson, still sitting in her drafts folder, unsent. She deleted it. She wasn't going back. She was moving forward. This was real now. This was happening. The dream that everyone had mocked was becoming something bigger than she had imagined, and she had done it by refusing to give up, even when everything seemed impossible. Sarah opened a new document on her laptop and started writing. Not a proposal this time, a plan. A real plan for turning memory through melody into something official. Something that could help hundreds of people, maybe thousands. She worked until 3 a.m, energized by possibility. For the first time in 6 months, Sarah felt certain she had made the right choice. The sacrifice had been worth it. The struggle had been worth it. The mockery and doubt and fear had all been worth it. Because she had found something real, something that mattered, something that changed lives. And she was just getting started. 18 months had passed since that painful Sunday dinner when Sarah announced her plan to pursue piano. Now she sat in her parents' dining room again, at the same table, with the same people. But everything was different. It was Thanksgiving. The house smelled like turkey and pie, just like it always did. David's kids were running around playing. Sarah's mother was fussing with the food in the kitchen. It all looked the same as before. But Sarah was not the same person who had sat at this table feeling small and foolish. She wore a simple dress, not expensive, but new. Her hands, which used to be soft from office work, now had calluses from piano playing. Her face looked different too. More confident, more sure. She had lost the tired, empty look she used to carry around when she worked at the marketing firm. "Sarah, before we eat, I want you to tell us what you've been up to," her father said. "Your mother keeps telling me things, but I want to hear it from you." Sarah smiled. 6 months ago, this request would have made her nervous. Now she was happy to share. "Okay," she said. "So you all know about Memory Through Melody, the music program I started for people with dementia." Everyone nodded. David's wife was feeding the baby. David himself was actually paying attention for once. After the healthcare conference, Everything started moving really fast. The local news did a story about the program. That story got picked up by other news stations. Within a week, it went viral online. Suddenly, millions of people were watching videos of Margaret singing and Robert conducting his imaginary orchestra. Sarah paused, remembering that overwhelming week. Her phone had buzzed constantly. Her email inbox had exploded. Strangers had sent messages saying the videos made them cry, reminding them of their own parents or grandparents with dementia. The attention brought opportunities. Lots of nursing homes and memory care facilities contacted me. I couldn't handle all the requests by myself. So, I did something I never planned to do. I turned Memory Through Melody into a non-profit organization. What does that mean exactly? David asked. It means it's an official organization with a mission to provide music-based therapy to people with cognitive decline. I filed all the paperwork. I got tax-exempt status. I set up a board of directors. Carol from Riverside Manor is on the board. Professor Martinez too, and Dr. Williams, who's a neurologist specializing in Alzheimer's research. Her father looked impressed. That's a lot of work. It was, Sarah admitted. I had no idea what I was doing at first, but I learned, and I had help from people who believed in the mission. How do you pay for it? Her mother asked. Are you still working at the restaurant? Sarah shook her head. No, I quit Marino's 4 months ago. The non-profit got grant funding. We applied to foundations that support elder care and health initiatives. We got 3 major grants totaling $200,000. David whistled. That's real money. It is, and it's let us expand. We're now in 23 facilities across 3 states. We have 4 music therapists on staff, including me. We're reaching over 400 patients every week. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed them photos. Pictures of different facilities. Pictures of her team. Pictures of residents engaged with music. Her family passed the phone around, looking at everything. This one is amazing, her mother said, pointing at a photo. Who is this? That's Mr. Harrison. He's 91 and has advanced Alzheimer's. He was a high school music teacher for 40 years. When our therapist plays songs he used to teach, he corrects wrong notes. His long-term memory for music is completely intact even though he can't remember what he ate for breakfast. Sarah told them about more residents. About Maria, who had been a dancer and still moved gracefully to music, even though she couldn't walk without help. About Thomas, a former soldier who found peace listening to songs from his military days. About Elizabeth, who sang church hymns in a clear, beautiful voice, even though she couldn't speak in conversation anymore. There's something else, Sarah said. A university contacted me. They want to do a clinical study on music therapy's effectiveness for dementia patients. It will be a real scientific study with control groups and measurements and everything. They asked me to be a co-author because of my documentation and observations. You're going to be published in a medical journal. Her father asked, his voice full of surprise. If the study goes well, yes. It will take 2 years, but yes. The timer in the kitchen went off. Sarah's mother got up to check the turkey. David's wife went to help. Sarah and her father and David sat at the table together. I owe you an apology, her father said quietly. A real one. Not just for not supporting you, but for calling your dream a crisis. For making you feel foolish. I was wrong, Sarah. Completely wrong. We all were, David added. I said some terrible things. At the restaurant that night. I called you delusional. I'm sorry. Sarah felt emotion rising in her throat. She had wanted to hear these words for so long. Thank you, she said. Both of you. That means a lot. I was scared, her father continued. I saw you leaving a secure job and I thought you were making a terrible mistake. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really just protecting my idea of what your life should look like. I didn't see what you saw. I didn't understand what you were trying to do. Most people didn't, Sarah said. I didn't even fully understand it myself at first. I just knew I had to try. Her mother called everyone to the table. They all sat down around the turkey and the side dishes and the pies. Before they ate, Sarah's mother said, I want to say something. Sarah, this year, I'm most thankful for your courage. You showed us all what it means to believe in something, even when everyone doubts you. You've made a real difference in people's lives. I'm so proud to be your mother." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. As they ate dinner, Sarah told them more stories. She told them about the Alzheimer's Association conference that had invited her to speak, about the documentary filmmaker who wanted to make a short film about memory through melody, about the foundation that was considering a 5-year grant that would let them expand to 10 more states. But the story that made her mother cry was about Margaret's daughter, Joyce. "Remember Margaret? The woman who sang at my first performance at Sunset Gardens?" Everyone nodded. "Margaret died 2 months ago. She was 8. Her daughter Joyce sent me a letter." Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her email. She read the letter out loud. "Dear Sarah, I'm writing to tell you that my mother passed away peacefully last week. In her final months, music was the only thing that still reached her. When everything else was gone, when she didn't know my name or recognize my face, she could still sing. Because of you, I got to hear my mother's voice again. I got to see her smile and be present, even if just for a few minutes at a time. Those moments were gifts. You gave me back my mother, over and over again, even as I was losing her. I will never forget that. The last time she sang was 3 days before she died. You were playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and she sang every word. That's my last real memory of her being herself. Thank you for giving me that. Thank you for showing me that my mother was still in there, even at the end. Your music was like a bridge to her soul. I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life." The table was quiet when Sarah finished reading. Her mother was crying openly. David was wiping his eyes. Even her father looked emotional. "That's not a hobby," David said quietly. "That's a calling." "That's what Professor Martinez told me," Sarah said. "When I was struggling and doubting myself, she said I had found my purpose." She was right. After dinner, Sarah's father asked to see more of the videos from her program. They all gathered in the living room, and Sarah played clips on the television. They watched Robert conduct. They watched Margaret sing. They watched Helen's shaking hands move in rhythm. They watched a man with late-stage dementia smile and tap his foot to big band music. "This is incredible," David said. "Truly, I had no idea it was this powerful." "Neither did I," Sarah admitted. "I thought I was just going to play piano and maybe make people happy for a few minutes. I didn't realize I was tapping into something so fundamental about how the human brain works. Music accesses parts of ourselves that survive even when everything else is destroyed by disease." "What's next for you?" her mother asked. "What's the next goal?" Sarah thought about it. She had so many ideas. "I want to develop a training program," she said. "Right now, our 4 therapists can only reach so many people. But if we could train activities directors and family members to use music therapeutically, we could reach thousands more. I also want to create a music library specifically for dementia patients, organized by era and genre, with notes about which types of music work best for which symptoms." "How big could this get?" David asked. "As big as we make it," Sarah said. "There are 5 million people in this country with Alzheimer's, millions more with other types of dementia. Most of them don't have access to music therapy. If we could reach even a fraction of them, the impact would be enormous." Her father shook his head in wonder. "When you told us you were taking time off to study piano, I thought you were throwing your life away, but you were actually finding it." "I found what I was supposed to be doing," Sarah said. "I just had to be brave enough to look for it." Later that night, as Sarah was getting ready to leave, her father pulled her aside. "I want to make a donation to your nonprofit," he said. "Not a huge amount, but something. I want to support this." Sarah hugged him. "Thank you, Dad, and Sarah. I tell everyone about you now. Everyone. My coworkers, my friends, people at church. I show them the videos. I tell them my daughter is changing lives with music. I brag about you all the time." Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. "That means everything to me." As she drove home that night, Sarah thought about how much had changed. 18 months ago, She had sat at that same table feeling crushed by her family's judgment. Now she sat there celebrated and supported. 18 months ago, people called her dream a hobby. Now they called it important work. But the biggest change was in herself. Sarah no longer needed external validation to know she was on the right path. She had learned that the opinions of others, even people she loved, couldn't tell her what was worth pursuing. Only she could decide that. And she had decided that reaching people through music, bringing them back to themselves even briefly, was worth any sacrifice. She thought about Margaret singing, about Robert conducting, about all the moments when music broke through the fog of dementia and revealed the person still living inside. Those moments weren't hobbies. They weren't practical or impractical. They were human. They were real. They mattered. Sarah pulled into her apartment complex. She lived in a nicer place now, one she could actually afford with her salary from the non-profit. She had paid off her credit cards. She had savings again. But more importantly, she had purpose. She unlocked her door and saw her piano against the wall. The same piano she had bought during her conservatory days, when she had no idea where her journey would lead. She sat down at the bench and played softly, not practicing anything specific, just playing for the joy of it. Music had always been part of who she was. From the time she was 7 years old, taking lessons from Mrs. Rodriguez, to now, at 33, running a non-profit that helped hundreds of people. The path hadn't been straight. It had been full of doubt and struggle and moments when she wanted to quit. But she hadn't quit. She had kept going. And in the end, everyone who said it was just a hobby had been proven wrong. It was never just a hobby. It was her life's work. It was her calling. It was the thing she was meant to do. Sarah played one more song, a simple melody she had written herself. Then she closed the piano and smiled. Tomorrow she had a meeting with a potential major donor. Next week, she was flying to California to visit new facilities that wanted to start programs. Next month, she was speaking at another conference. The dream that had been mocked had become reality, and it was just the beginning. Sarah thought about all the people with dementia she hadn't reached yet, all the facilities that didn't have music programs, all the families desperate for any way to connect with their disappearing loved ones. There was so much work to do, but she was ready for it. She had proven that some dreams are too important to abandon, no matter who doubts them. She had proven that what others dismiss as impractical can change lives. She had proven that following your calling, even when it's terrifying and everyone thinks you're crazy, is sometimes the most practical thing you can do. Because, in the end, what could be more practical than doing work that actually matters? What could be more valuable than helping people find themselves again, even in the darkest stages of memory loss? What could be more important than using your gifts to serve others? Nothing. Nothing at all. Sarah got ready for bed, feeling peaceful and grateful. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was supposed to do. The mockery had turned to admiration. The doubt had turned to support. The hobby had turned into a movement. And it all started because one woman refused to let other people's fear stop her from chasing what her heart knew was true. That was the real lesson. Not that Sarah was special or unique, but that she had been brave enough to trust herself when everyone else told her she was wrong. Anyone could do the same thing. Anyone could choose courage over comfort. Anyone could chase a dream that others called foolish. It wouldn't be easy. It would require sacrifice and struggle and lonely nights wondering if it was all a mistake. But on the other side of that struggle was a life that mattered, a life with meaning, a life that made a difference. And that, Sarah had learned, was worth everything.